Hi guys, this is Mike. In this Cinema 4D tutorial, I'm going to talk about the Mesh Commands menu. What I'm going to talk about is Array, Clone, Disconnect, Split, Collapse, Connect Point/Edges, Melt, Dissolve, Subdivide, Triangulate, Untriangulate, Set Point Value, Spin Edge, Edge to Spline, Change Point Order, Optimize, and Reset Scale. Go to Mesh, Commands, and then peel off this palette by just clicking on this bar right at the top. I'm going to pull this over until the white line is just about right here. And that way I have this menu available to go through all of these different options. So I'm going to start off by going to primitives and choosing a cube. And I'm going to press C on the keyboard to make that editable. Now I'm going to go over to polygon mode, go to live selection tool, and select this polygon right on the side. I'm going to move this over a little bit, zoom out a bit. And I'm going to go to choose array. And you can see we have a few different options in our attributes manager. We have the ability to clone out these polygons that we have selected, and just this one right here. And we can clone in the X, Y, and Z. So I'm going to press apply, and I'm going to zoom out so you can see all the clones. Oops, sorry. And you can see that we have 3 in the X, 3 in the Y, and 3 in the Z, which is in the depth view. And we have the ability to add in more as we go, as long as we have real-time update checked. Now you'll notice that as I'm adding in clones, that it's not building up or out or in each of the different coordinates directions. It's building within this sort of like a box, and we can adjust that by going to the offset. So we can offset in the X and Y and Z. We also have the ability to adjust holes by changing this slider right here. And that kind of fills in or takes away as we move the slider. And we can also use the value and type in a value right here, or use these up and down arrows. And we also have some variation, where we can variation in the move within the X, Y, or Z. And we have scale variation. Now you notice I can't do any scale within the X because it's a flat polygon. But we also have rotation. And we also have uniform scale. If we have that checked, we can keep those that scale uniform. So let's move on to clone. I'm going to hide our cube that we made. I'm just going to name this array just to keep this organized. So I'm going to choose a cube again. Let me zoom in. Make this editable. And I'm going to go to polygon. And I'm going to press clone. Now you'll see that we have a few options in our attributes manager. When I press clone, we have various clones that we can adjust or add to, and we have our offset. And then when we press apply, you can see where this polygon kind of pops out. Now you'll notice that it's not connected to the object. It just gives us ability to take a polygon or polygons and clone them out. And let me go back to our tool. And you can see that we have similar options to what we had with the array. And I'm going to undo back. We have the ability to clone out, offset, create holes, scale. So we can drop down the scale. We can adjust where the axis is going to be. So maybe I'll go to the Z. We have rotation, variation in its move, just like we had with the array, and scale and rotation. Now when we hit apply, you can probably see that got moved within the cube, so I just had to move that out. So you can see that we have the ability to clone out these polygons and have a level of degree of control of where they clone to and their position and rotation. I'm going to name this clone. So I'm going to go to another cube, make that editable, go to polygon mode, and I'm going to select this polygon. And we have disconnect. So if I press disconnect and pull this off, you can see that it's still part of this object. It's just disconnected from the rest of the object. So we can still pull this out and adjust this, but we can go back to our model mode and still rotate the whole object around. Okay, let me hide this and let me go to another cube, make that editable, and go to polygon mode. So let me go to live selection and choose this polygon. Now I'm going to press split. Now what you're going to see here is we have our cube, but we have another object that's created underneath the cube called cube 1. This is very important to understand, is that we have our cube split off from this polygon. So I'm going to pull this out. You can see that it's now split away from our cube, our original cube. But if I go back to our original cube that we created, original object, you can see that we still have our polygon selected and it's still connected to our object. So and a way to think about this is if you select the polygon and press split, it gives you another object with just that polygon selected, or polygons, how many polygons that you have selected. And always keep in mind that that split object will be underneath your original. So now I'm going to choose a cube, and I'm going to go to a few segments here. I'm going to press NB on the keyboard to bring up garage shading lines. And I'm going to go 2, 2, 2 for the segments. Make the object editable. I'm going to go to point mode, choose a point here, and we have this option called collapse. And what that's going to do is if I select, say, these polygons, press collapse, you can see that now all collapse into one point here. So now I'm going to choose a plane, and I'm going to drop down the segments. Make the object editable. And now what I can do here is I'm going to select these polygons, and in fact what I'm going to do is I'm going to start over. I'm going to choose a cube instead. Sorry about that. And I'm going to make this editable. I was just thinking this is probably a better way of explaining this, a little bit more simpler instead of using a plane. I'm just going to choose a cube. I'm just going to pull this polygon out so it's this elongated rectangle. And I'm going to choose these edges right here. Now we have this option here for connect points edges. With these two selected, I'm going to press here, and you can see what happens is that we have a edge that connects these two edges. And if you go to point mode, you can see it adds in the points as well. So let me go back to edge mode. So this is very useful when you want to add in some edges, and so you can continue to add in edges that connect between these two selected edges. Now you'll notice that this will create these n-gons here. So let me undo back. Another way to do this is go to UB on your keyboard. That's going to bring up this ring selection, and you'll select all the edges of this cube in this direction, in this ring, and then you can press this again, and now you can see that it'll add in edges that go all the way around your object. So let me go to a cube, and let's add in some segments. 2, 2, and 2. I think will be fine. Let's make this editable. And now we're in melt. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select an edge, press melt, and what that does is it's going to remove that edge. But if you go to polygon mode, you can see this is one polygon, and we have our points here as well. Now if I go to edge mode and choose dissolve, you can see how this affects the geometry differently than when you use melt. When you use dissolve. So if I go to this edge here, dissolve, you can still see that we have our points And let me go back to, we can also do this in point mode. We can dissolve that out as well. So it gives us a way to blend in our geometry, and it's real useful when you're building out topology and you want to redirect your edge flow. A lot of times you'll have a triangle that is that's connected over, and you want to remove this triangle. And you can then right click, dissolve, or you can just use this tool here and you can dissolve that out. So I'm going to name this melt and dissolve. So let me hide this and let me go to another cube, make this editable. And we have a few here: subdivide, triangulate, and untriangulate. So if I subdivide, you can see how this creates cubes. Excuse me, creates subdivided polygons. We have triangulate, which will then create triangles for all your polygons. And then we have untriangulate to remove the triangles. So I'm going to name this sub try untry. And I'll hide this. And now we have set point value. So I'm going to go to a polygon here, a cube here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to 2, 2, and 2. Make editable. I'm going to go to front view. I'm going to go to rectangle selection, have unchecked, only select visible elements, and check tolerance selection. Select these let me go to polygon mode, select these polygons, delete, point mode, optimize. I'll get to that in a minute. Let me go to front view, or excuse me, perspective view. And then I'm going to go to symmetry. I'm going to put our cube into a symmetry object. Go to point mode, UL for loop selection. Now I have these points selected. I'm just going to pull these over and create this gap. You can see as I'm pulling this out, we have this gap in our symmetry. Let me undo that. So with our cube selected, we have set point value. So I'm going to click on that. And we have some options in our attributes manager. We have various options here. But the best way to describe set point value is when you want to move your points over in a specific way and in a specific coordinate system, and make sure that they're all uniform. And the best way to describe this is using this symmetry. So say you're in a character or a hard surface object that you're modeling, and you know it's symmetrical. So you put it in a symmetry object, you cut it right down the center, and you start modeling, but you accidentally create this seam. I made this very obvious so you can see the result, but you accidentally move something over and it's now out of alignment. So what you do is you go to your X and you go to set, and then you'll go to your coordinate system, you'll go to world, and then you apply, and that'll snap to your center line. So it's just a way of being able to control these points and have it snap to your coordinate system. Okay, I'm going to hide this. Now we have this. We did set point value, so let's go to spin edge. So I'm going to go to a plane, and I'm going to bring this down to about 5, just something manageable. And I'm going to make that editable, go to edge mode, and I'm going to choose an edge, and I'm going to choose spin edge. And you can see how this works. It spins this edge and connects to the next nearest pole. And you can keep applying this. And this is very useful for when you want to redirect edge flow within your topology. So you can see this edge as it goes from one edge to the next corresponding edge. And then maybe if I had some more room, you can bring this out again. And we'll go to spin edge. So you can kind of see how we have this edge flow as you're using this loop selection. So it's just a way I found to be very useful when redirecting edge flow. You can use a spin edge to spin that edge around to exactly where you want this edge flow to direct. So I'm going to name this spin edge. Now we have this edge to spline. Let me hide this first. I'm going to go to, say, a sphere. And let me pull this out a little bit. And let's bring down these segments down to, I don't know, let's try 8. Let's try I think that'll be fine. So I'm going to make this editable. And I'm going to go to UL again, go to edge mode, select this edge, and we have edge to spline. So what's going to do, if I go to my sphere in my object manager, you can see that we now have a edge, or excuse me, we now have a spline that has been created from the edge of our sphere. So I'm going to pull my spline out of my sphere, hide my sphere, and now you can see that we have this edge that we can then add to a generator, say like an extrude maybe. And right now this is in the wrong direction. Whoops. So we can move this and then add geometry this way from a spline, from an edge from a polygonal object. So I'm just going to grab all this, put this in a null, Option G, and I'll just name this Edge to Spline, and hide. Now we have change point order. So I'm going to go to a plane. And I'm going to bring this down to about, say 5, something manageable. Maybe even 4. Doesn't even have to be that big. And I'm going to make this editable. Now, to understand change point order, I'm going to go to a cube first. Make this editable, select this polygon, and I'm going to go to UI. That's going to reverse the selection, delete, get rid of some of these points. And so we have our points here, and we have a point coordinate system within Cinema 4D. And to understand that, I'm going to go to Structure tab. That's right over here where you have your objects. Right down here we have Structure. And the way our coordinate system is in Cinema 4D, if you select a point, you can see that's the first point that we have down here. So that's at 0. The second one will be across here. So that's, we have this one selected, and you can move this. You can see it will move that in the Y within this second point. Let me undo. Go up across here to 2, which will be our third point. And then right over here, now be our fourth point, indicated here by 3. So you can see anything that we choose to move, you can see the coordinates that move within this structure. Now, if you go to your polygons, you can see that we have our coordinates. The Z will go along the normal, and you can see our X will go along this point path here, and our Y, which will go in this direction, going along our points that we have here. Our 0 and our 3. But if you go to your model mode, you can see the difference in our coordinate system. So our polygonal system is different coordinates in different direction than our object system. So I just want to point out those concepts before moving on to our change point order, because it's an important concept to understand. So let me hide our cube. Let me go back to our plane and make that visible. So now that we understand the point coordinate system within Cinema 4D, it'll help you understand how you change that point order. So a good way to visually explain that is to go to our matrix extrude. So I'm going to select our polygons, and I'm going to select all, Command A. MX is going to bring up our matrix extrude, and I'm going to click in our viewport left to right, and it creates our, you can see our matrix extrude and how it turns outward. So when I change my point order, let me undo back, change my point order, you can see that now it's facing in another direction. Let me undo, change point order, click again, now it's going in the other direction, systematically around, undo, change point order, and now it's facing in another direction. So it's just a way of being able to use our tools within Cinema 4D, and if you need to adjust, for this example, matrix extrude, if you need to change that point order. So I'm going to select these objects, Option G, change point order, and hide. Okay, now we have optimize. And I was showing you before that when you make a cube and say for example you make that editable and you select your polygon UI and you delete and you go back to point mode, you still have these points left over. Even though you deleted the faces, you still have some points that are still here. Now if you click on optimize, those will then disappear. Now you have this option here. If you go to optimize and you right click, go down to optimize, you have a gear that you can click on. And this gives you a tolerance and a way to understand this tolerance is if I go to another cube. Let me click OK. Let me go to another cube and let me pull this out in this direction. And let's see, what's the best way to show this part? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this editable. And I'm going to go to polygon mode. And I'm going to go to disconnect. And you can see that this is now disconnected from our object. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in a bit, pull this down, and go to point mode. And you can see that these points are pretty close together. There's going to be situations where you're modeling and your points will not be completely welded together and they're just going to be hovering near each other. And you want these all to be connected into one object. So what you do is you'll go to optimize, and I'm going to go to optimize again, right click, gear shift, and if I click OK, you can see nothing happens because our tolerance is so low. So I'm going to go to optimize, go to our gear shift. Let's bring up our tolerance. Now you can see when I click OK, that point now welds together. So I'm going to select these, Option G, and I'm going to name this optimize. Okay, now we have reset scale. This isn't something that you normally will be using in your modeling process, but I do want to show this one little point. And what I'm going to do quickly is go to sphere, and then I'm going to choose a cube. Pull this out a bit. And I'm going to select both, press C to make these editable. Now I'm going to go to model mode. Now when you're these two modes, model and object, you can see one is just a cube and the object mode or object tool will put us into object mode. You can see it has a little film strip next to it. Best way to understand the difference between these two modes is model is for modeling, object is for animation. And so if you're going to be resizing something within an animation and you want it to scale, you'll scale that within object mode. If you want to change the model in some way, you can go to model mode. So the reason why Cinema 4D does this is other programs might have these in separate modes. So if you want to change the model, you have to go back to modeling and make any of the changes and then bring that back into your animation mode. Cinema 4D has this where you can make your animations, and then if you need to change something right then and there, you can just switch the model mode, make your adjustments, go back to animation mode, object mode for animation, and then do your animation. So there are some weird situations where you're doing something and you get some distortions, and this is where reset scale is going to come in very handy. So I have my sphere. I'm going to put my cube as a child of my sphere. Go to model mode, object mode. And then what I want to go to is I want to go to my sphere, and I want to go to the X, Y, and Z scale. I just want to go to the X and go to 2. And you can see, as predicted, that you'd have this distortion, this stretching. So if you select your cube, and then you take your X, Y coordinates off, and then you go to your rotate tool, and you rotate, you can see the distortion that I'm talking about. So in order to fix that, you would undo, you would select your sphere, where you can see you have the scale set to 2, go to reset scale, click on the gear, make sure you have compensate points and reset child objects checked. Select OK. Now, when you want to make a change to your model, you'll go to model mode and rotate, and you can see now that distortion you don't have that distortion now. I put a link in the description to download project files. You can also go to astronomic3d.com to download project files from this tutorial and all the tutorials that I've made so far. Thanks for watching.